Every decision you didn't make, every what if you've ever imagined, actually exists. There's a world where you become a painter instead of a student, another where dinosaurs never went extinct, and another, somewhere out there, there's a version of you watching the same video but wearing a different shirt. This isn't sci-fi. It's one of the boldest, strangest, and most controversial ideas in all of philosophy. A theory so radical it tried to rebuild reality itself. It came from one man, David Lewis, the philosopher who looked at the universe and said, all possible worlds are as real as this one. David Lewis wasn't your typical philosopher, quiet, brilliant, and deeply analytical. He had a habit of taking ideas to their most extreme logical conclusions, and then believing them. While other philosophers used possible worlds as metaphors, just a way to talk about hypothetical situations, David Lewis said, no, they're real, literally. Not just imagined worlds, but existing ones. Each just as real and concrete as ours. We just happen to live in this one. To most philosophers, that was insanity. To Lewis, it made sense. Here's the problem Lewis was trying to solve. How do we make sense of statements about possibility? When you say, I could have gone to the store, what do you actually mean? Where does that could have exist? If it's purely imaginary, then how can logic and truth apply to it? Philosophers like Leibniz and Kierkegaard wrestled with this for centuries, using possible worlds as thought tools, imaginary versions of reality used to explain truth, necessity, and possibility. But for Lewis, that wasn't enough. If we're going to talk about possible worlds as if they exist, then maybe they do. Lewis called it modal realism, and it's simple, and the most mind-bending way possible. Every possible world you can describe, any logically consistent way reality could have been, actually exists. You didn't go to the store, there's a world where you did. The universe collapsed after 1 second, there's a world for that too. Each world is self-contained, no travel between them, no overlapping timelines. Just countless independent realities, all equally real. To you, this is the actual world, but to someone else in another world, theirs is. Now, this might sound like philosophical fan fiction, but Lewis had reasons, sharp, logical reasons. He argued that by treating all possible worlds as real, we could explain everything from counterfactuals to causation with perfect consistency. When you say, if I had studied, I would have passed, you're not talking about imagination, you're referencing another world where you did study and you did pass. And by comparing this world with that one, we can make sense of possibility, necessity, and hypothetical truth. To Lewis, this wasn't absurd. It was elegant. It made modal logic precise. It turned what if into mathematical clarity. But elegance came at a cost. Because if every possible world exists, then infinity suddenly becomes real. There's a world where every coin flip lands heads. Another where Shakespeare wrote video essays. One where you didn't exist, and infinitely more where you do. Philosophers called it bloated, extravagant, and even absurd. Why believe in all these worlds, they said, when we only need one? Lewis's reply? Because it works. To him, the price of simplicity was small compared to the explanatory power it offered. In other words, he invoked his own version of Occam's razor, not to cut down possibilities, but to accept all of them. The strange thing is, Lewis's idea stuck, not because everyone agreed, they didn't, but because his theory was too coherent to ignore. Modal realism reshaped metaphysics, logic, linguistics, and even computer science. It made philosophers rethink what it means for something to be real. When you imagine a different version of yourself, you're not just daydreaming, you're in a sense describing another world, a possible world. And maybe, somewhere in the infinite landscape of existence, that version of you is imagining this one. David Lewis died in 2001, but his idea keeps echoing through philosophy like a riddle that refuses to die. Because if he's right, if every possible world exists, then the universe isn't just vast, it's infinite in every direction. Every thought, every choice, every possibility is a reality unto itself. And somewhere, there's a world where you never watched this video, and another where you watched it twice. Lewis once wrote, "We are not special in the sense of being actual, we are just here." And that's the paradox he left us with. The more worlds exist, the smaller yet more meaningful ours becomes. So the next time you wonder what if, remember for David Lewis, that question isn't fiction, it's geography. The map of all possible worlds exists, and you just happen to live in one of them.